Now, in 2010, Heritage Oil sold its interest in Uganda to Tullow Oil. That's for over $1.5 billion US, and the Ugandan government decided to impose a capital gains tax on the sale. But the oil funds refused to pay, and the dispute was tussled out in the local courts in the UK and international tribunals. It was concluded in 2015. Now, on the recommendation of the president, 42 senior government officials were awarded 6 billion shillings amongst them in what is now referred to as the presidential golden handshake. I have a guest tonight for Newsnight to talk to us about that. That's the former leader of opposition and the Agago North MP, that is Honorable Ogenga Latigo. Good evening.
Good evening, Flavia.
How are you?
Well, I think exhausted a bit.
Yeah. It's only 10 days into the new year, but doesn't it feel like...
Oh, today has been really something emotionally. Some of us never anticipated this. This is something maybe we'll talk about in history, but
that it did happen and go down.
Yes.
Let's before we get down to the criticism, I wanted us to maybe talk about if we've missed celebrating the win, as the 42 officials, some of them have been claiming. Do you not see the good we did? Forget that we've gotten a reward. Did you not see the good we did for government?
Actually, for me, and that's why no media house quoted me at all. My concern is that the story looks too simplistic. It begs for what is behind all this.
Yes.
And until I get my fingers on what is behind all that,
in its entirety,
yes, it's almost pointless to react. Because ask yourself, what were the exploration agreements? Is it possible that a country like ours could enter an agreement where somebody could explore, and if he discovers oil, there will be no tax? If there were provisions for taxation, what happened to that provision? So the story is much bigger than what we are saying. What
led us in trouble in the first place to then take us to that?
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on the reward in the first place? Because if you look at it on surface, it is corruption ideally, because it should not be given any monetary value for, as a public official, for your work.
You know, how many people are involved? You're talking about 40-something people, even more. Just think about, how do you apportion credit
to each one,
of
the 42?
Those? And how do you arrive at the figures that they shared out? But I'm somebody who likes to watch President Museveni.
Yes.
If this was a genuine recognition of good things, you would not ask them to write and ask. No. If the president tells you...
Would it have been a backdoor reward and nobody would ever hear of it?
Absolutely. So for me, there's more to this than meets the eye.
Really?
Absolutely.
Is it more than meets the eye in favor of him or in favor of these individuals?
If you ask, and the stories are out.
Because they have broken it down.
Yes.
They went through the procedure that was supposed to be taken.
That happens in this country, where you agree on something and say, how do we work it out so that it looks clean? Yeah. So all these things about letters is just to make it clean. The decision was made, and the basis of that decision is something that I would want to know. For example, there's a lot of this story about the initial figure and then the final arbitrated figure, and those were not
700 million US dollars.
Yes, and then the actual figure came down to something like half for one share of the taxation claims. So how did you get into that compromise position?
Are these some of the questions members of parliament are seeking to
Absolutely.
get into?
And for me, those are more important, because you know this money that has been shared out is nothing. The important thing is that it is about oil, a commodity that is supposed to be and will be in this country for the next 40 years.
And beneficial too.
And if it is mishandled, what does it mean for us if this is how we have started? Because this is not the first instance on oil. The very first one was when the president took money and bought fighter jets and said, we'll replace it with oil money. And so the promise of oil that we talked about initially, that raised the expectations of Uganda, is obviously in smokes now.
Already a curse?
Absolutely. Yes, absolute curse now.
So now, first of all, there's that court order, ban to, for the discussions and thoughts in Parliament, and the Parliament, and you've decided not, indefinitely to also close off until that the gag is put off. I mean, so what's the way forward here?
Well,
and also I was concerned because if all relevant papers and documents were there, and as you said, some do it just to look clean, but if it's already there, what more can you discuss in Parliament?
You see, the essence of accountability is like post-mortem. Then you know. So that next time you have a problem, you know that with this sign, this is the likely issue to address. And therefore, for our situation, if Parliament's insistence on accountability can restrain those who have the responsibility to look after our resources. But
members of Parliament and accountability, we have held you accountable a couple of times.
Look at it as individuals and institutions.
Okay. But
Parliament as an institution has that obligation to oversee the activities of government, the executive, and it has that responsibility to account to the people.
Definitely. For
what happens in this country. And if only that is what we would achieve, that we can go back. I come from Acholi. The oil fields that were sold were actually in Acholi. And today again we see Tolu selling the oil fields, A1 and all, those were also again in Acholi. As a legislator from Acholi, people will ask me, what has happened to the oil that comes from our land?
I hear you.
And therefore, that becomes very important, that I understand what is going on, I have a good feel of the things, and I can go and tell my people
the truth.
That, look, I mean, this looks good. Don't worry, it will be fine.
Thank you so much, Honorable Ogenga Latigo, saying accountability is what they are seeking. That's been Newsnight.